In this video, I'll show you what an installation of PostgreSQL, an open source database, looks like, so it's easier to install and you can get started working with SQL sooner. You've decided to learn SQL. You've read the tutorials, you've looked at books, but now you actually want to practice it. How? One way is to install your own database, but this brings up a new challenge: how to install and manage a database. In this video, I'll go through a high-level general overview of a PostgreSQL installation. This will help you confidently install and set up the database so that you can start practicing SQL. When I started to learn SQL, I came across this very problem. Where can I put in queries and see real-time live results? There are a couple of options. One option is using practice sites on the internet. Another option is to set up your own database. Now, this is not as difficult, as intimidating as it first might seem. First of all, we have many powerful database software packages out there, such as PostgreSQL, that are open source. So these are very accessible and they're not very hard to install. I thought we could walk through an installation of PostgreSQL just to get you better accustomed for when you install PostgreSQL. So let's dive into the structure of Postgres. The basis of an installation of Postgres is called a cluster. This cluster will contain one or more databases and the supporting files needed to run it. This data is all stored in a folder known as the PG data folder. That isn't the actual name of the folder on your computer. It can be put in many places. Each cluster will have its own port and its own server. And you can have multiple clusters on your computer. If you have different versions of Postgres, they'll need their own clusters. Secondly, you might want to have different settings for different groups of databases, different roles or users or things like that. In that case, it's useful to have different clusters so that these settings can be distinct and different between the different groups of databases. To summarize, we've installed PostgreSQL, and then we'll have one or more clusters, and within each cluster, we'll have one or more databases. So far, we've been talking in abstract about what a PostgreSQL installation looks like. Now, let's actually look at a real-life example. So here is my computer with an installation of PostgreSQL. As you can see, I have two clusters, a 9.5 version cluster and a 13.5 version cluster. Before I can interact with one of these clusters, I'll need to ensure that the PostgreSQL service is actually running. It usually starts up automatically when you start your computer, but for various reasons, sometimes it's not running. There are multiple ways to start it. One is to use Windows and start it through the OS. I recommend this one. Two, you can use a command window. You can use the PG control tool to start and stop Postgres service. The problem I find with the command window is that if you close the command window, you stop the service. And sometimes I forget to keep the window open. You can also do other things, such as check the status of a cluster if it's running. We're going to use another tool now called PSQL, and we're going to access a database. Now, let's make a list of the databases. As you can see, I have template 0, template 1, and Postgres. Postgres is your default database. If you don't specify a database, when using PSQL, by default you will be sent to this database. Notice that there's an asterisk mark in the prompt. This means I've logged on as a super user, and I have all privileges. Now we can start reading and writing and practicing SQL commands. Another option to use is pgadmin, a client often distributed with PostgreSQL. This again allows us to see the idea of what a cluster is, how we have a cluster and then we have multiple databases in it, and as you can see, they're sharing some common features. Also note that in pgadmin you can also run queries if you like. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just click the button below the video. Now, I'll turn it over to you. Go out and install your first PostgreSQL database and let me know how it turned out in the comments below. Till then!